Today's episode will have Jimmy and I once again going through specific business information as business owners and our experiences. We've both had experiences in terms of restructuring, reducing debt, and unlocking hidden value that is second to none. The biggest issue I see with business owners is fundamentally they rely on quick wins to ultimately grow revenue or keep profit, but don't necessarily think of or know how to play the long game. It's the difference ultimately between a business owner and company operator, where specifically with SBA's new rules, thousands of business owners who previously relied on cash advances can no longer refinance those debts through traditional channels. So basically, if you bought a company in the past 5 years, this really could mean the difference between growth and collapse. Today, we're going to reveal the blueprint for turning ugly balance sheets into beautiful exits and why the most profitable move may not be what you expect. If you're looking at buying or building a business here in 2025, there are some changes that are coming around June 1st that are ultimately going to impact how you're going to go about that. So today, we'll go through those pieces and talk through a lot about what I do within the Octane Group and what Jimmy does at his company. Jimmy, thanks for being here. Tell us more about yourself and what you do in helping businesses.
Oh, definitely. Thank you. Yeah, Jimmy Rios, Rios Business Advisors and Rios Business Funding are our main companies. We built a little financial services ecosystem that, caters to small and medium-sized businesses, but really any business that, can use our services. And we become mentors and advisors in helping businesses look at different structures and different ways to better do business, right? Yeah. And to help them grow and stabilize their operations, get rid of the burden of debt, look at tax minimization strategies, and how they're structured with regards to their insurance and, some of the other wealth building aspects that a business can have, and also talking about trusts and holding companies and different things that start getting a little bit more exotic that people just don't know about, right? And so without wanting to blow somebody's head off with too much information, we take it very step by step, and we start actually analyzing where the weaknesses are inside the business currently, right? What are the strengths and what are the weaknesses and where we could do better, right? And that's how we start working with our clients is really, and many of them come to us with a capital need, right? They need money for something, right? But then when we start uncovering the true needs, we start seeing that, there's some areas that they could cut on their costs, and there's some areas where credit-wise where we can better their situation. So you're pivoting in many different fashions with a business, but it's given them a perspective that they didn't have before. And you become very instrumental in helping them see the light because, hey, we're very good in business as entrepreneurs at being good at technically, but we might not have all the pieces to know, taxes and insurance and marketing and, all the different things that we look at. So that's where we try to be helpful.
Yeah, that's something that I've been talking to a lot of companies recently where it's just like funding isn't always the answer. If you have a dud, it's going to continue to be one. And, it's sometimes challenging. It's always challenging to share with someone that their baby's ugly, right? The expression around like you just don't want to tell someone that their baby's ugly, but ultimately like it just has this feeling and has this kind of piece, right? When you look at your finances and the operations of a company. And so the answer again is not always more funding. Like you mentioned, reducing cost. I did an episode with, Sean with Schoolie Mitchell. He goes through, cost reduction with companies, which is great. And just even that mindset and awareness of it might not be just reducing costs, but it also could be changing providers where you also get more value for, what you're spending, right? And so that sort of mindset shift. And then of course, profitability is the most important thing because that ultimately what keeps a business up and running. There's a conversation I had a day ago where ultimately a business was looking to inject, some of its personal capital into the company to kind of keep it afloat. And it's like, hey, out of your 5 services, which one's the most profitable? Out of the 3 different types of asset classes that you focus on, which one is the most profitable? Where's your cost of acquisition? Like, is it lower or higher on each one, right? And also, how did you acquire that individual? Because then you can kind of build these systems to just say, hey, relationships, help build, this type of service, which then was the most profitable. And then you just go down these things. And it's like, wow, if we take this process, we find 5 more people here, we can just transcend it, right? Because funding also gets difficult, and it depends on the company, but also in just terms of the cap stack, right? If you're taking on debt, or if you're giving up equity, and what that sort of piece is, what you're exchanging with it, especially down the road. Eventually, if you're looking to sell, that gets more complicated because the cap stack could get muddy, and then no one wants to buy the muddy water essentially. So yeah, totally agree with it. With some of these changes that are coming through for June 1st, specifically around debt and working capital. So debt is going to be around debt refinancing. So merchant cash advances and factoring financing are no longer eligible for SBA refinance. I mean, where are you thinking this in terms of SBA refinancing and this sort of piece of individuals who've kind of recently purchased a business? Because I mean, this would really impact those who've had a business for decades are probably not going to have an SBA loan. So I'm really thinking the past kind of 5 years of sorts would really kind of impact people. What are you thinking in terms of impact? Is this a big issue? Not really concerned?
Well, let me tell you, because we work in all the arenas, right? And there's a proper place for every single thing, right? And many companies, unfortunately, have needed to go and find a recourse through merchant cash advances and factoring as their way of getting in. One of the things that we've noted, we kind of foresaw this happening like years ago, right? We started putting things in place to be able to help companies, right? So like many times, if that is your only option at that moment for opportunity cost reasons, then we'll have you jump through that hoop. But we set up structures to be able to get you out of that as quick as possible, because, and especially now with no longer being eligible for SBA refinances, you have to be able to have a contingency plan in place, because those types of financing, they're very expensive, right? And they could take a company down quicker than make it grow if you don't have a plan in place, right? With our company, we actually set up a structure, or we call it an evolution or an allocation of funds diagram, that shows how we're going to put that money to work in your favor to be able to pay off the debt in 3 to 6 months, right? So if we do this diagram for you, follow our steps the way we have it laid out, what happens is that we prepare you on the back end for that SBA financing without having to worry about these pieces of the pie, because we know that these were necessary at the time. Many times they'll come to us with multiple loans like this, and we know that that has to be taken care of, right? So we've already addressed that elephant in the room and said, look, we're going to have to take care of this first. Whereas many others will just go straight without knowing into SBA applications, and they don't know the rules, or they don't know, and then they get denied. Well, hey, this is why. Why didn't you tell me that before? And we would have been able to avert that, right? So we're always thinking 2 steps ahead, like, all right, this is what you have, and though it might not be pretty, we're going to make it pretty, right? And it might, well, I like to say we like to go slow to go fast, right? So it might take us a little longer. It might cost us a little more. But in the end, if I'm able to do what I'm saying I'm going to do through my allocation of funds diagram, you're going to be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel a lot quicker. And you're going to be very thankful that we implemented those things. And again, a lot of the people don't do these things because they just don't know, or they go into these types of loans because they don't know. And I mean, it's easy as somebody who has sold this for 20 some years to show somebody, well, if you do this, you're going to, save this and sell it in that fashion. I'm more of the mindset that if we're going to go into ugly to get pretty, we're gonna have to do it for X amount of time, and this is how it's going to look like for the next 6 months, so that it's not like a shocker, right? But by us being able to dictate and diagram it step by step, right? Now there's a blueprint for success to be able to help them see the light. Many of them don't do it that way. Many of them just go blindly. They don't even read their terms. Sure. They don't. Then they come to me. They go, "There's a UCC1 I didn't even know about." They started closing my bank accounts. I mean, I hear all kinds of horror stories. But everything has a solution with the proper help, right? So we're able to get through those nuances and problems. But I think it's just working with the right people that are going to help you through that, because these things are not going away. There's a lot of money in that world of merchant cash passive asset factoring. I know many owners of those types of companies, and they love it, right? And it does solve for some people a lot of problems in their business, but it's got to be properly structured.
Yeah, you're also through kind of reading between the lines, talking about being proactive and planning, right? So not just, hey, I'm going to do this, but also understanding the repercussion and what this is going to happen down the road. And that ultimately is like an important function of just being a business owner. It's not just what's happening today, but what is changing in the future. How can I understand what that wave is and then also kind of ride that wave as well, certainly.
Right.
Now,
100%.
Working capital is going to be another thing that's changing. So requests where working capital is 50% or greater of the use of funds must provide detailed justification and benefit to the business. Talk to us more about, what you're thinking in terms of working capital, as well as, your experience doing business funding and what, I would say almost trap this could get business owners into. And that's just my experience, right? Again, on this idea of like, if you have a business that's not profitable and you take on working capital or business funding, you still have a business that's not profitable, right? Which, talked about in previous or in the other episode, but with working capital and business funding.
It's such a conundrum, catch-22 of sorts, when it talks about working capital, because if you have a sinking ship, right? And you have so many holes in that ship, the only way you're going to be able to plug those holes is to inject the proper capital. The injection of capital needs to be distributed to plug up those holes and make it go back upstream, right? To be able to start generating profits. So that might be an ugly pill to swallow when I tell you that, in doing your analysis, we're going to need to do a budget for marketing for the next year. We're going to need, to purchase X amount of equipment to do X amount of production. We're going to need to hire blah, blah, blah. And I start really laying it out for you. And wow, your eyes just went like this, because you were just thinking that you wanted $50,000 to pay off some debt. Well, that's not going to suffice if you have, all these merchant cash advances. We're going to need to change things. And the reason you have holes is probably because of that, right? And so that's where I guess we become partners in progress, right? Where we're going to, and that's actually my motto, is we're partners in progress. If we're going to undertake this sinking ship, right, we're going to look at all your options. If we're really going to try to right this wrong, then we're going to have to go in with a very strategic plan on how we're going to fix this. And it can't just be 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Like, I'm going to do maybe this. No, it's like, you got to let us control the action together. No different than if you had a full-time CFO and CTO and, with a board of directors telling you, this is what we need to do to right this ship. We got to do it right. And I don't think a lot of people are ready for that, when it comes down to it. I think it scares them, because like you're telling it like it is, and it's just from 23 years of, failures on my end and experiences that I've had to battle through to get to where I'm at, that, I can talk with authority because I've been that guy. I can empathize with where they're at, right? And like you said earlier, telling somebody that their kid is ugly is not a fun thing to do, but it's so appreciated once we do it and they accept the problem and accept the solution on how we're going to go about doing it. Now, if you don't want to do that, then the alternative is let's look at something. Let's look at let's look at exiting, and let's look at other means for you, because otherwise you're just going to put yourself in a bigger burden and your heart's not in it. You're just not going to do it. And you're not going to do it. It's like somebody trying to go to the gym and say, I want to lose, 40 pounds, but they don't want to get a trainer or do the diet, and follow the nutrition and do the work. Then you're not going to get the results. It's just not going to happen.
So you're saying that you go around and just tell people that their children are ugly?
No, I don't tell them that they're ugly. I might have to say that, we might want to change their shirt and comb their hair a little bit.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing as well, especially when you're helping business owners. It's the idea of, hey, here's the maybe solution, right? This is something that I've seen happen 5 times over, potentially with myself. Here it is. Here's the kind of pill or fix, or by doing this will, make everything easier. As well as also making it a coaching opportunity of like, hey, it seems like what you're doing isn't working. Tell me more about that. Oh, well, all these things. Okay, well,
And this is where I think for us as advisors, where it can become difficult, because I can't control your actions over time, right? I hope that I can, give you enough tools and enough advice to do it. But how easy is it to blame someone else if I don't do the work, right? So it's very easy to say that you were misled or, that, and that's what I was like, we need to start being accountable and start taking responsibility for everything that we have. Because if you're not doing the work and getting the stuff done that needs to be done, nothing is going to happen. I can give you all the money in the world. And we've seen this with big companies, right? How many huge conglomerates out there have folded or needed to exit based on not doing the work properly, right? And they have the money and the wherewithal to be able to get whoever they need to tell them what to do. But somewhere, they didn't do what needed to be done, and they saw the effects of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, it's a great understanding and realization, not just for these changes coming, June 1st of 2025, but also just business owners in general, with refinancing, with working capital. What is that allocated towards? Like you mentioned, it's not just paying off debt, but it's also, going towards things that actually generate and help the business, and finding different ways to get creative with the business. And if the creativity can't work because ultimately the person doesn't want to, then selling could be an option. But that's also if they're even able to sell, right? Just like we talked about in our other episode about being able to sell. So no, I mean, it's incredible insights. We'll see how really these changes are really going to impact business owners. Are there any other kind of parting thoughts you have in terms of debt refinancing or working capital that we've not talked about that ultimately you found through either your experience or with business owners that you talked to?
Well, we've at Rios Business Funding, we've really taken a big approach with non-recourse funding and being able to work through helping businesses utilize debt and debt for debt, right? Be having that debt, putting it into a platform that is going to be able to give them monies that they can get rid of the debt and be able to offset that debt through non-recourse. And it's something that many more people need to start educating themselves on how they can use these tools that we've implemented, specifically in our eye-level to high-level program, because we saw that need. We saw so many people coming on the right side of our two-sided coin where they needed capital and they needed, they got to get into debt, but they didn't know how to alleviate the burden of debt in the way they were doing it. Right. So we developed a program to be able to alleviate the burden of debt through our investment profits and being able to give them a plan of action that would pay off that debt and put them in a better spot and not forsake or put a lot of their assets at stake, right? Where we can now work smarter, not harder, and ultimately get to where we're going to go. But we're still going to address the elephants in the room. We're still going to, talk about your ugly baby and how we're going to make it pretty and go over all those things. So it does entail going through some of this process, go ugly to go pretty, and that's okay. We're going to do it, but at least there's better options out there than the traditional that's been said. And many out there don't have those means. They don't know, right, on how to do it. We built a system to do it, and that's where we come very.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing, Jimmy. Definitely beneficial for myself and other business owners learning more about this and being aware to then take the right action, not just any action.
Definitely. Paul, it's been a pleasure. Always good to be on your show, and look forward to
Sounds
the next
great.
one.
Thanks, Jimmy.